Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on Instagram at Tokyo Station Pens, and you can find QSato at QSato on Instagram and QSatoTokyo.com.
And my name is Jacob. I am Fudufan on Instagram and on Threads, and very occasionally on the YouTubes as well.
And I don't remember what episode number this is, but you've been pretty active on Threads. You're starting like this like a newsletter type of Threads thing, right? Like where people just follow you and you update people with Japanese stationery news.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out what to use Threads for. I mean, some people just use it as an alternative Instagram, posting photos, and I've used it a little bit like sort of B-roll, or like photos that don't make it to the Instagram feed, but that's kind of boring. So now I'm posting news and sometimes a bit of commentary.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously we've not recorded in quite a while, but a lot of things have happened. So we have a show notes. It's not really in any particular order, but let me just let's talk about a little bit about these new products, shall we?
Which one do you have in mind?
Okay, so let's go in order. So not in this order, but in the actual order that they were released. So a few months ago, Jacob, you and we exchanged a series of Instagram stories about a new pilot. So this is, of course, or not of course, but I think most people don't know. But we've always said that Pilot doesn't release interesting colors, but they have a lot of nibs, right? But they only release the interesting nibs in the boring pens and the boring nibs in the interesting pens. So in around late June, early July, these photos of these colorful, I want to say they're 742s. Yeah, custom 742s.
Yeah.
So the number 10 size. And so we saw these colorful photos of these 742s, and I want to say it's like the smoky. Does it look purplish, or is it just smoky gray? Might be just smoky gray.
Smoky gray, and then there's like translucent
blue, green, and red. And while they're not the most adventurous of pens in the general landscape of pens, in the Pilot ecosystem, they're pretty interesting, right? It's not often that you get just new pens or new colors in the same pen. So a bunch of these photos started showing up, and then they would get deleted like 24 to 48 hours later. And so we were pretty confused as to what was going on, like what are these pictures? So you had Central, Fujimaru Central.
Yeah, I think they were the first ones to post about it, and I just reposted like their feed, like Instagram feed post to my story, and I wrote about it. And like shortly after I did that, they removed their post.
Yep.
And then like 1 or 2 days later, I believe, it may have been Shosaikan posted on their feed, right?
Yep.
And then that got deleted as well, but I think maybe they just made a mistake, because eventually that came back, I believe.
Yeah. And then Shosaikan, so sorry, you actually went to some stores to ask about these pens. You said you went to Maruzen and Itoya.
Yes. So I even did a short video about it, because the Maruzen actually had they had a little display. They had samples, so you could look at them, and you could try them out, and you can pre-order them. So it's a little bit like, if you remember, like 2-3-ish years ago, they had this Neo Classic, where first they just sold them in the store, but then they did like a second batch where you could try them out in various nib grinds, and you have to pre-order them in various nib grinds, and then you can pick them up like 6 months later. That seems to be like the same concept they have here. So you could go to the store, you could try them out. You can decide on nib grind and pre-order, but you couldn't just buy them because they weren't available yet. So, and the other thing that's a little bit confusing is that I think we both assumed that this was the annual custom club model. So we have talked so many times about how Pilot once a year, they do this custom club model that certain retailers get to sell in Japan. This is not, as far as I can tell, it's not a custom club model, because there's another custom club model this year. There's like Pilot Grande or something. So this is something different. I'm not sure what Pilot is doing here, and I'm not sure if this is going to be a Japan exclusive, but it's a limited edition and it's available in one sort of standard kind of boring grind, and also I think it's the FA nib, and perhaps most interestingly the new and very popular signature nib.
Yes, I have a little bit of information about that. I also totally butchered the name of Daimaru Fuji Central, but that's a long name, so I hope everybody will forgive me. But yeah, like it's they had this preview thing in late July, which I'm not really sure why, but this item actually releases in November.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the press release around these items was so botched and not really hype at all. So I'm not sure why they were doing this preview to begin with. But yeah, you're right. It is pretty much like what they did in the past with the Neo Classic. But with the Neo Classic, you could pre-order with almost any nib, and at the time they didn't have the signature yet. But this time they're limiting it to only 3 nibs. It's as you said, it's the FM, the FA, which is the Falcon to Western listeners, and the S, which is the signature.
Yeah.
Which to me is pretty interesting, because now for, I mean, I don't want to say the first time, but it's not often that you get interesting color with interesting nib.
Yeah.
And when they did the Neo Classic last time, now looking back, it feels like it was kind of a testing ground to see, what are the popular nibs that we can offer in these kind of bodies. And then I hope that some light bulb turned on in their brains, and they're like, oh, people just don't want EF, F, M, and Bs only. Right?
Yeah.
So who knows? But this is the companion pen to the Neo Classic, in my opinion. And yeah, it's a little bit of a mystery why they're doing it now, but maybe they have a plan for this in the future, or maybe they're just doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there are many things we like about Pilot. There are many things Pilot does well or better than other Japanese pen makers, but one thing they don't do well, I think, is communication, and we'll come back to that when we talk about Iroshizuke inks. But it can be very hard to find out information about, especially the custom club exclusive, but also any limited editions. We always talk every year about these Japan exclusive capless pens. Almost no information online. They are. I'm not sure if it's intentional or if they just don't really know how to communicate stuff like this. It's a bit of a mystery for a company that otherwise is so well organized.
And maybe they have like a different marketing team for the fountain pens. Maybe it's just like the fountain pen team is just one team in their organization, and then they have to do everything, right? Like they're in charge of like product and marketing and retail and all that stuff. So maybe you don't have like a professional marketer who's actually working in that team. And then the thing that I said, I had some information. It does seem like this will be a Japanese domestic exclusive item. But it still shouldn't be super hard to get these overseas, because Bungabox was taking orders last time they did the Neoclassics. I don't know if they'll have it again this time, but assuming they do it similar to what they did last time.
Yeah, some retailers see that as more of a loose guideline, right? So, and Nagasawa usually are very good at, shipping overseas.
It's a Japanese domestic retailer exclusive.
Yeah, so maybe only the retailers are allowed to sell it, but that doesn't necessarily restrict them from selling to overseas customers.
Yeah, and I think also because if the overseas retailers don't have this SKU, then, there's less of an argument. I'm not saying that I would be happy as a retailer, but, there's less of an argument from the retailer side to say, hey, but you're cutting into our margins by doing this gray market thing. Well, they don't have the SKU anyway, so yeah. So, Pilot was busy. They also decided to discontinue 3 Iroshizuku inks, and then issue 3 new Iroshizuku inks. Now, we're not the first to break this anymore, but should we start with the ones that were discontinued?
I want to talk a bit about how this was announced. I think that's the most interesting part, because as you say, I think most people know about this by now. I think Penna, like other podcasts, blogs, etc., have talked about them. But the interesting thing to me is that most of us, I believe, found out from either Western retailers posting it on their online store, or Pen Addict Slack, or elsewhere on social media, Reddit. It was known to stationery fans in the West long before, weeks before. It was known even to retailers in Japan, because I remember when I think you sent a link to me, or like a screenshot, and then I think I saw like the same day there was discussions about it on Pen Addict Slack, and which makes me think that maybe the retailers in the US got information. Some retailers probably were very excited and started chatting about it. But when I saw that, I went to various retailers in Tokyo. I went to Maruzen, I went to Marichi, I went to Okamoto, I went to a few others, and asked them about it, and they were all genuinely surprised. I'd never heard about it. And Okamoto, they were kind enough to call up their Pilot rep, and I overheard that conversation, and they basically said that there's a foreigner here who says that the Western retailers already have this on their online store, and you could tell from hearing one side of the conversation that the Pilot rep was surprised about that too. So I wonder if there's some miscommunication between Japan and the US here, but the retailers in Japan didn't know about this until I think first week of this month, while it's been widely known to, again, the Western audience for, I think, was it mid-August? What do you say?
Yeah, I would say early to mid-August. I mean, this news has been going on for a couple weeks now. And yeah, it's strange that for once the Western audience actually had news before the Japanese audience, and just, I don't know, retailers leaking this information out early. I don't know, did they have an embargo date? That's just very surprising, because we don't really see Pilot leaks that often, do we?
Yeah, which makes me wonder if the retailers maybe weren't supposed to say something, and some people got overly excited. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's fact. That's just a one possibility. But then Pilot and Pilot Japan, I think it was a few days ago, they posted an official press release announcement on the Japanese website, and they talked about the 3 new inks, and we can talk about them. But then it was if you scroll down to the end of the page, there's a little Komajirushi sort of footnote where they say that 3 existing inks. I think it was Tsujuji and Kirisame. I can't remember the third one. They're going to be discontinued. That was really not something you were supposed to pay attention to.
Yeah, the Kirisame, Tsuji, and Cosmos are discontinued. And then the new colors are Rikka. Can't read this. Shungyo and Toro.
And by the way, the first two, they're actual names, same names as Platinum has used on its 3776 limited edition, except that the pronunciation for Rikka was Rokka, right? But it's the same kanji, right?
Yep. So, what do you think about these colors?
When I saw the first photos, I thought the Shungyo would be more sort of red, dark red. Now it looks more gray, blackish. I'm not sure if there's enough red. If it's a dark red, I will be interested in it, even if it's somewhat muted. The Rikka, the blue one, I've seen photos showing it just a sort of pale blue. I've seen now in upcoming issue of Shimi no Bungabaku a swatch that looks like it has a bit of green in it. So I'm not really sure what it's actually going to look like. But if it's like a turquoise ink, slightly muted turquoise, pale turquoise, then that could be interesting. The yellow one doesn't really do anything for me.
Yeah. I feel like they're almost kind of doubling up on colors. I feel like there's so many blues now. I like the red one because I don't think they had a real red in their lineup. And then the kind of yellow orange one. I think that's nice, but I don't think that's going to be a bestseller either. I think Kirisame is one that a lot of people are upset about. It was a really nice gray, so you only have Fuyushogun now. But, it is what it is.
They were pretty similar to Fuyushogun and Kirisame, so I don't think we're losing too much. And I'm really glad that they add the Shungyo ink, whether it's actually dark red or more of a sort of toward the black end of the spectrum. But it looks interesting. Rikka, I'm keen on comparing it to Kujaku. I think they might be similar. Maybe Rikka is a bit more pale.
Yeah, for sure.
These will be available in Japan in mid-October and then in November in US and maybe elsewhere.
Yeah. And, they're okay. They're okay. They're. I don't see a new bestseller here, except maybe the Shungyo.
Yeah, I think I personally I'm more excited about these, especially Shungyo, than I was about the previous batch of new inks. Right, those didn't do anything at all for me, but the Shungyo could potentially be interesting, and possibly even Rikka, depending on what it actually looks like when I ink it up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Next new item, or rather old item, but a couple years ago we broke this news, and we talked about this very exciting project that Sailor was doing called Ancora, and it was a direct-to-consumer retail store that was at least partly controlled by Sailor, mostly under their parent company Plus, and then part of Ancora was this, build your own Prophet Junior kind of experience. And I think that's been wildly successful. But then they also had, at least during the pre-opening, they had already shown this Sailor bespoke program where you could mix and match different colors and even get up to like nibs like Naginata nibs on your pen, and then they just delayed this release, and then when it was released, they removed the Naginata options. They removed several different options.
It's never really worked that well.
Yeah, and so now they have announced that they are discontinuing it.
It was always a Japan only thing, right? So I think most people hearing this probably don't really care. But I think this is a good sign in the sense that Sailor has, as we talked about, and we may have talked about again this episode, but has problems to say the least. And if this means they are removing some distractions and focusing on what actually, the core business, then that's a positive sign. I would rather have a focused sailor that's doing okay than a sailor that's stretched thin and losing money everywhere.
You say that, but actually, Sailor in the US has been doing this thing where they are, at least at the pen shows that I was at over the summer, they've been doing this program where you can mix and match and create your own 21K Sailor Pro gear.
So are you saying this is a show exclusive and not something you can order online or go to a retailer to do?
Well, I don't know if it's a show exclusive or not, or if it's just something that Sailor USA decided to do. But yeah, it was a surprise to me that they had finally allowed that to happen. But it seems weird that now that Sailor Japan is discontinuing that, Sailor USA has I suppose started this program over there.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but again, if this, I assume this means that this wasn't really doing anything for the bottom line and it was just a distraction. And if that's the case, then I think it's great that they are actually taking concrete steps rather than just, year after year, just complaining about gold prices and not actually making any changes to the business.
The second thing that they've changed is that their retail exclusive models have been moving from 21K to 18K.
I saw the Bung Box one. I think I saw another one. But are you saying that this is now across the board?
Well, the Hachimonji Kubozakura also is now 18 karat gold.
Oh, and that's not even a new model. That's just, here's an existing model and you're going to take 18K and you're going to like it. That's how it is now.
That's right. That's right. So I think that's pretty interesting. It's definitely moving the right direction. I would have liked them to go down even more to 14 karat gold, but we can't always get everything right. So
we'll see what happens going forward. Not to spend too much time on this because we already discussed this in previous podcasts, but in the last episode, I believe, which was more like a quarter, this made like a quarterly thing now, we talked about Sailor's quarterly earnings just released at the time, and we said it was a disastrous quarter in the sense that sales were down and costs, even fixed costs, were up. But we also said that Sailor was forecasting a return to, if not profitability, but at least break even by year end. And they specifically highlighted non-gold nibbed fountain pens as sort of the way to recover it. That was, part of their plan. And now 3 months later, Sailor has had yet another even more disastrous quarter. And now, unfortunately, they had revised their year-end forecast. So, forget what we said about break-even. We actually expecting now a loss of 290 million yen. So they are still very much struggling, and maybe discontinuing the bespoke and other distractions will help them.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't look well for Sailor. And there are other signs too that are a bit more kind of sinister, and that is like, not to turn this into sort of stock analysis podcast, but when you're looking at how a company performs, one thing you often look at are the cash flows. And one of the categories of cash flows that are interesting is the cash flow from financing. So if you have a young growth company, you usually want to see the cash flow from financing to be positive, because that means they're raising capital either by borrowing or by issuing equity, because they need to either build factories or buy H100 from Nvidia or whatever makes sense for the business, right? The growth company is supposed to raise capital to grow, right? On the other hand, a mature company is in general supposed to have a negative cash flow from financing, because they should be able to pay dividends, dividends, repay their debt, and that's a sign of a profitable, healthy, mature company. They don't expect to grow much, but they have enough money to pay off their debt and repay their shareholders, right? Sailor is an unprofitable, mature company that has a positive financing cash flow, and if you drill down, you see that they're increasing quarter after quarter their short-term borrowing, which is really not a good sign for a mature company. So that worries me too.
So who is lending to them? Do we know?
I don't think that they're raising more bonds. I think this is maybe banks or whatever, but it's not a good sign for a mature company to increase their borrowings.
Yeah. And so in US dollar terms, they're doing about a loss of 2 million, which I suppose, definitely could be worse, but it's not a good sign at all for the company. And I think that they've had this strategy of just, they had something good, right? They were doing really successful with the colorful pens. So then they decided to just drop a new color every 3 days, and people got tired of them. So I think this is definitely a warning about oversaturating your own market. And I think they played really comfortably in what I would call the mid-range. So I would say from $300 to $600, or rather 30,000 to 60,000 yen. And they were really comfortable in that area, but then that's kind of the price point where you get squeezed out when people start worrying about finances, right? It's not like a cheap expense, but it's also not expensive enough to the point where your whales are buying up all of them, because they're probably looking at something on a Namiki Emperor level, right? Or a Nakaya level, something a little bit more high end. So yes, I think over the past couple of years, there's been, globally talks of, are we going to be in a recession? Are we not going to be in a recession? And then people have been a little bit less, loosey-goosey with their own money compared to the COVID years, where you had a lot more disposable income, what with, work from home and stuff like that. So I think a factor of macroeconomic elements as well as company strategy, they're now forced into, as you said, I think the way they're looking at this is, the economy is not going great. I mean, in Japan specifically, right? We've had now only, in the last 50-ish months, we're finally on the second consecutive month of real wage growth of 0.1% or 0.2% or something like that. Whereas all the other months, so 48 consecutive months of negative wage growth on an inflation that's about 3% now, 3.5%. So they know that the Japanese economy is not doing great, and so their inward focus into steel nib fountain pens, again, that's playing outside of their expertise, right? Their expertise was in the mid range, so they don't really have a lot of expertise there. I think the Tuzu probably is doing better overseas than domestically. If I would have to guess, I don't have the exact numbers, so I can't, really, say with any authority. But based on what we see in the retailers and here and versus over there, right, and also just online, it doesn't seem like anybody domestically is talking about the Tuzu. So, I do understand that they want to play in the lower end now, but it feels like more of a reaction. And I think when you, as a business, when you do that kind of reaction, you're almost a little bit too late to the game unless you think there is going to be sustained recession, which now it looks like it's not going to be. So, who knows? But in any case, they're not doing the best right now.
I would say that they do have decent low-end product, and one product in particular that I think they did really well is the Hokoro series of dip pens, and you see them everywhere. So I think that they are probably doing well, but this probably just doesn't do enough for them. Just anecdotally, I hear that the Tuzu is doing well, but that may, again, this is not solid data, it's just anecdotes. Maybe the organization is just too big for the kind of sales they have. So maybe what they actually need to do is to look at their cost and see if they can have a more nimble, cost-effective organization that doesn't need kind of the gangbuster sales they are hoping for now.
Well, that's definitely a good sign. But let's say they're doing really well, like I said, in the mid range. So let's say 50,000. So for every $50,000 pen, they have to sell 10 $5,000 pens. The Tuzu, I think, is on the higher end of the steel nib options. So, are they really selling like millions and millions of these Tuzu pens or these steel nib pens? Like my question is, are they making up the volume? Are they growing their potential market, right? Their total addressable market. Are they growing that at the same speed as their price down strategy if they want to make the same or more money? So yeah, it's definitely hard. It's definitely a difficult question, but we'll see by the end of the year what they say.
Another alternative is that they sort of go the other way around. They go, the Monte Grappa, Mont Blanc, Graf von Faber-Castell route and go all in on like high-end, very elaborate, so thoughtful special editions. I think that's a possible venue as well. Because I think the problem right now, I mean, this is just my own view, is that the Pro Gear is a mid-range pen with an increasingly high-end price. And if you look at the new Pro Gears coming out, it looks like someone opened up the Photoshop model and looked at the hue adjustment layer and just tweaked it a bit, and then here's the new model light. It's not enough to be excited about, and there's a big price increase with each model, while when you're buying a Mont Blanc, when you're buying a Monte Grappa, when you're buying like a Leonardo, each model it's usually quite different and kind of thoughtful and inspired. I think that may be the way to go.
Yeah, and obviously there's like an investment in there, but those are usually like, I think, quote unquote, more recession proof because the people buying them are just already rich and probably not too concerned about several $1,000s of purchases, if they're buying it at that level. So yeah.
It's hard to compare because what is kind of unique about Sailor is that it's a publicly traded, almost pure play fountain pen maker, right? It's hard to compare to Mont Blanc, to Parker, to Faber-Castell and others, because the big companies are usually part of some like luxury conglomerates. The small makers are privately held. So either way, you can't really do an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, but Maybe they could go more lifestyle too, right? Maybe they could go more like leather goods, accessories, and stuff like that. Stuff that people want to buy at a higher margin.
Yeah, I'm all for
We're
that.
I don't know if you can actually see Mont Blanc's. Obviously, you can see Richemond's numbers, but I don't know if they break down into any kind of detail. They probably do because back when I was at G, people knew our specific numbers. So
I'm talking about the sort of fine writing aspect of it, because if you talk, I mean, even Pilot, we talked about it in the past. Even for Pilot, you can't really tell how the fine writing sort of segment is doing, because that's like fine writing to Pilot is like Bugatti is for Volkswagen. Right? It's sort of more about image and prestige than something that does something enough to the bottom line to warrant a mention in the reports.
that is right. Okay, next topic.
Yeah.
Nakaya is back with a vengeance. By vengeance, I mean vengeance in terms of pricing and not in terms of offering. There are some items that have gone up, a lot, and we'll talk about the pricing stuff overall later. But yeah, Nakaya has resumed. So I'm reading a press release, or their blog, I suppose, which was published on September 3rd, so last week. And it says, due to the Noto Peninsula earthquake on January 1st, the lacquerware industry in Wajima has suffered significant damage. We have managed to partially restart our production line, and we will resume accepting orders for some products starting Tuesday, September 10th. So that's in 2 days. And then they have price revision and services resuming. Urushi lacquer repairs. We will generally resume accepting repairs. However, please understand that some repairs may not be possible. B. Makie naming. It is not expected to resume, but for special orders, it may be possible, so please consult us. And then 3. Zogan inlay on the grip section. It is not expected to resume. So, looks like they're just resuming lacquer repair work.
And the only pens they sell are the titanium ones, right? Is that still the case?
No, so I do know that they are starting back up their lacquer ones as well.
Okay, that's good at least.
Yeah, but in very limited numbers and limited models.
Price increases were to be expected, but it's good to see that they're on the right track.
Then speaking about price increases, let's talk about these. Well, everybody is increasing the price, right? Like, let's just get that out of the way. Everybody is doing price increases to some degree. Let's talk about some of these pilot price increases, because they are aggressive.
Yeah, so if you go to the website, you can see price increases for pilot models. There are also price increases for Namiki models, which I vaguely recall are even higher, but that price list is not on the website as far as I know. But so if we talk about the pilot models only, the biggest bump is 40%, and that is the custom Kaede. And
Yes.
then there are a few models that are like 33%, and that is the capless Raden model. There's custom Heritage 92. There is the silver, aka Sterling Silver Collection model, and then there are a whole bunch of models in the sort of high 20s, mid 20s% range.
Yeah. And then just over a longer period of time, the Custom 74 has doubled in price in the last 3 years. And the smallest increase that you wrote here, less than 7%, was for the capless LS.
Which was pretty expensive to begin with. Yeah. So, I mean, you can blame inflation, but Japan's core inflation is 2.7-ish%. So, I mean, this is way above that. So the other factors, and again, gold probably being one of them. Pilot has in the past been a bit more conservative, I think.
They've been later. They've been slower at the increase. But yeah, the custom Urushi is what, 90K now?
I think it started around 80, 90K, and now it's, after the price increase, it's like 160K, which right now I believe if you today go to...
Yeah, 165K.
Yeah, 165K, which I believe is roughly the price you would pay for a Namiki custom, Namiki Urushi 50 if you go to Maruzen today. It's going to change too because Namiki prices are increasing as well, but right now... before October, if you go to Maruzen and pick up a Namiki Urushi 50, then it's roughly in the 160K range.
Maybe that's what I need to do. And then for Sailor, I won't go through all of them, but every single Naginata Togi pen has had a price increase. And we're now looking at the standard Naginata, which was, when I first bought it, 23K. And then when they kind of redid the line, I think it was about 50K. And now it is at a whopping 99K Japanese yen.
Yeah, I remember buying my first Naginata Togi on Amazon for 20K. So this is me being old and grumpy. But yeah, I mean, it's understandable that prices are going up. I mean, it's also probably... Yeah. I imagine that in addition to the actual, material cost, there is more competition for the kind of talent they need to produce these nibs now than there were before. I think Sailor has, we may have talked about that, they have probably, they have sort of underpaid their nib workers historically, right? And they have probably options now, and that may have been factored in here.
Yeah, so obviously that is a huge increase as well. Did we see anything about base platinum?
I can't remember. I mean, we have definitely seen platinum increases here and there, but I don't think there was another increase at the same time here. But it happens every once in a while. And usually, with all three of these pen makers, you tend to see them indirectly via the limited editions before you see the baseline, the base models increasing. So, for example, we'll talk more about that in a bit, but there's a new Platinum 3776 limited edition coming this month that is nearly 40K, and it's, I think, a bit higher than we've seen in the recent past. So, yeah, Platinum is increasing prices as well.
Yeah, which puts them squarely at the pre-price increase Sailors. For limited edition products, anyway. Platinum, I'm on their website right now, and their first image is a mechanical pencil, too. So it looks like they are kind of diversifying outside of just purely fountain pens. Although they are... a privately held company. This mechanical pencil, Pro Use 231, it actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, that one's pretty popular, I believe. Yeah, I see them a lot. It's usually promoted if you go to these stationery stores and you see, mechanical pencils. It's promoted along, the Kurtoga metal and other like high-end mechanical pencils.
Yeah, so maybe they're trying to push that a little bit more. But yeah, I don't see any specific price increase news on their website right now. So, who knows? Maybe they're just a little bit later than the rest, but I'm sure it's going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Should we talk a bit about the upcoming events here? Because August was really quiet. In Japan, and it always is. I mean, we've talked about that in the past. August is not a good time for stationery fans to come to Japan. There's almost nothing happening, no new releases, no events, etc. But September is when everything starts. So this week we have the big Kamihaku paper event. So that's probably too late for anyone listening to this podcast. But starting next week, Wednesday, I believe, it's Maruzen's autumn event. So it's going to go from the 11th to the 24th, I believe. And they have some interesting pens as usual. Perhaps the most interesting one is a capless Waka Remon, so like a green yellow gradient Maruzen exclusive capless. That one looks pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if it's already sold out from pre-orders though. Another pen that's going to be sold at Maruzen's event is a new Shishikura produced Platinum 3776. It's a translucent blue called Yuki Asobi, which looks pretty cute. A bit surprised about that one because it's done with the Sunrise Trading, and we talked before about how Shishikura is no longer working with Sunrise, but apparently she's still collaborating with them on this edition. So those are probably the two sort of flagship pens at the Maruzen event. And then just before we go back to this event, we quickly mention the other upcoming events. So there is the Shumino Bungobaku has its autumn fair on the 22nd, 23rd. And then finally there is Wagner's autumn event on the 29th. So it's a lot of stationery stuff going on in September.
You're missing one.
Pelican Hubs, right?
Somebody didn't respond to their emails.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Yeah, I am the hub master of Pelican Hubs, and I'm giving Jacob a lot of poo-poo for not reading his email.
Yes.
But so it's a quite a long month, good month for stationery fans.
So if you go back to the Maruzen pens, did you have a look at the two pens at the event?
I did.
What are your thoughts?
I think the Wakaremen looks really nice. I believe that is a Desmo though, right?
Oh, is it? I thought it was a full. I could be.
I think it's nice. I think no matter what, that will sell.
Yeah.
The caplesses are just in general, crowd pleasers. So
yeah,
I think that'll be, I hope they made a lot of them, and I think they'll go pretty quickly. I think the platinum is really ugly.
It's a bit surprising, right? Because it's not really what you would think of as a Shishikura produced pen, and in particular, there is a concerning lack of sparkles.
Yeah, and this screen printed thing. I think the thing on the converter, I really think that's cute. I think that's adorable. But on the cap, it's a little bit out of place, if you know what I mean. It's a little bit too toy-ish, cartoon-ish. If it's gonna be at this price point, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at that price, I think Platinum's own, Fuji, whatever series pens are more interesting because you get these interesting cuts on the barrel.
Yeah, the textures, yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
Are you going to attend any of these events? Well, other than Pelican Hub, which I'm forgetting again.
Other than my own. I might stop by. I don't know, I'm actually going to go to Kansai again. And then we'll do Wagner. Brian from Hong Kong is also coming, so we'll go to Wagner. Might stop by Maruzen, who knows? But nothing really interests me per se. Yeah.
Okay.
And then lastly, as we're running out of time, what's going on in your own personal stationery life?
Me? I have.
Yeah, you.
Well, I have slowed down my purchases dramatically. I don't really buy much. I am mostly interested in kind of interesting stories about old nibs and pens, and I have made some videos here and there that are too obscure for most people. I've been for example, I have finally picked up a Pilot Super 500. I've been writing about that, been doing video about that. I think that was just absolutely stunning pen. And other than that, I'm still writing my Shimmerbun column, but I'm running out of topics to write about. So I always think that the next column is going to be my last one. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, because that's been going for over a year now, right?
Yeah, I've been written 8 of them so far, 8 or 9 of them so far, something like that.
2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. I'm surprised you bought the Super 500 because that's an expensive pen.
Well, you know me, I only buy something if I find a really good price, and I did find a really good price. So my plan for that one, by the way, is to give it to Kanesaki-san for a
rebody
renovation. Yeah, because he posted on his blog that he had taken a customer's Super 500 and converted it from that, what's it called, like switch filler. There are different names for it, but that old filling system always breaks down.
Yeah.
Converted it into a cartridge converter, and that's, I think, sounds pretty interesting. I'm gonna ask him though if it's possible, given that he is like the world expert on Inkidome right now, if he could make an Inkidome, a Japanese style eyedropper, Pilot Super 500. That would be pretty cool.
That would be a very long pen.
That would be a very long pen, but it would be hilarious and would be unique.
Yeah. Okay. So you're investing, you're doubling down on this. I like it.
What about you?
On my side, we just came back from the United States. 2 months of pen shows. A lot of people were asking about you. A lot of people said they love the show. So, they're saying that it's such a shame that we're not recording anymore. I had to say, we're probably going to record in a few weeks. Just wait. But I did buy some new pens. I bought 2 Mont Blancs from the store, of all things. But I like you now, am an owner of I don't know if... Yeah, you have the bigger one, I think, but I have the Meisterstück 100th anniversary one. And then I also got the Paris Olympics edition.
Oh, the red one.
Yeah, the nice red one.
That one looks very...
I was thinking of getting the nib swapped out, but if only.
Oh, you want a bespoke nib?
That's definitely part of the consideration. But we'll see if I can stop being lazy and go out to the shop, then maybe. But yeah, slowly preparing for Europe next month. We'll be at the London Pen Show. But yeah, just pretty busy with work. I can start talking a little bit about it now, but I was working on this Blackwing and Travelers collaboration, which just released, and I think it's sold out for Design Phil. And then also I was working with them on their new US exclusive. So nothing too much, just their road trip stuff, which has now been announced. But yeah, the US pen shows. Can we talk a little bit about Stationery Fest?
Go ahead.
So, Yoseka, I haven't really told this story publicly, but basically in January of this year, I texted Yoseka. I said, "Hey, I'm going to come in the summer. Can I do an event with you guys again?" And they were like, yeah, sure. But they had to, play around with the dates because there are a couple of vendors. So I think specifically myself and the Superior Labor were going to be around at the same time. And then somehow this thing just became this huge event with, I think, 5,000-ish people, maybe a little bit more than 5,500-ish people in attendance, loads of vendors. And They really, I think, managed to recreate a Japanese style stationery event, a la a kamihaku. And personally, I think it was a really, in my opinion, well-run event. I enjoyed my time there. As a vendor, I really couldn't have asked for too much more. Obviously, there are places for improvement, but they really did a really good job at Stationery Fest. And I think the main thing that people were talking about are lines and lining up, and this isn't anything product related specifically, but it's really amusing to me because to me, when I see these lines, they're like, noob numbers, basically. They're saying they're lining up for 2 hours, and then they get in, they have to keep lining up. I'm like, 2 hours, I hope you never have to go to a Tonal Limbs event. But they managed to recreate that part as well, with the lines. But there's definitely a little bit of a different culture of like, waiting and lining up for events. So I would say, going back to our earlier topic about, the events in September being a good time. I think the mega events, if you ever plan on coming to a mega event here, be prepared to stand in the heat or the cold for a long time. Wear comfortable shoes because, there's going to be way more lines, and, inside similarly crowded, right? But the other ones, so like the Marzen and stuff like that, it should be fairly okay. But even for Marzen, I think people are waiting outside for, people used to wait outside for hours before opening. So
one question I have about this event is, from my understanding, this was just before, maybe just a week or two before SF Pen Show, and I believe both of these events, both the Stationery Fest and SF Pen Show, are kind of Asia-focused, Asia-centric. Would you say, do you believe that the SF Pen Show was hurt by this, the same way that, the Misukoshi Pen Show was sort of hurt by Marzen, or are they so far apart in actually, distance that these are completely different crowds?
That is a super interesting question. I think the DC Pen Show was probably a little bit hurt by it, and a little bit hurt by, just the way that the show is set up. So we did okay in the DC show, but we definitely overperformed at Stationery Fest. Just in terms of, raw numbers, right? We did 3 times at San Francisco what we did at Stationery Fest.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I don't think there was too much cannibalization there. But then for the DC show, yeah, there's probably a little bit of a... But it's a totally different audience. Stationery Fest audience are much, I would say, earlier in their... or not earlier, but, they're more focused on the accessories, more focused on, journaling, washi tape. Whereas DC Pen Show, there's a lot of like kind of older folks who are really into, of course I say in jest, but the stinky black pens. So it's definitely a different vibe. But I did talk to multiple people who said that the DC show wasn't as crowded as they expected, and there's probably some kind of a correlation.
So you're kind of saying that DC is sort of the Wagner type crowd, while the Stationery Fest is in the Bungo Joshi crowd. Is that?
Oh, 100%. But I do hope they bring it back next year. What I was really impressed about was how they were able to bring a lot of, vendors that don't even go to SF, right? So like Hachimonja was there. That was pretty cool. The Superior Labor was there. Obviously, they're one of the main attractions. And then, I'm surprised they managed to get Betchery there, because that's a long flight, and Betchery was also at San Francisco. They got like Lamy there. It's really quite impressive what they were able to pull in terms of vendors and like star power. Lucas Mahoney was there.
Do you think this is the reason why they had the event so close to, or in time close to San Francisco? Because these are the Japanese vendors that probably were intending to go to San Francisco anyway. So if they go to US anyway, they might as well attend both of these events.
Oh, but they didn't stay. So Battery actually came back to Japan and then went back to SF.
Oh.
And Toyota Craft did the same.
They ran out of stuff to sell, or is...
No, because I think it was just too long to stay. And, the hotels are really expensive and stuff like that.
Okay.
But they said they did it right after New York Now so that, vendors can attend New York Now. And then right after... do Stationery Fest.
Okay, interesting.
But yeah, like it was pretty crazy. The Design Fill Table Travelers Company and a little bit of Plotter, they sold out of every single item. So there's definitely appetite. And this is one of the events that when I came back from it, it gave me a lot to think about in terms of, well, how are we going to, as I said earlier with Sailor, how are we going to increase our total addressable market, and how are we going to move people upstream from, let's say, buying like a $10 pen to a $100 pen to a $1,000 pen, right? Like, what's that customer journey there? Because there's definitely a lot of interest. Something interesting about the Stationery Fest was that we got a lot of people who came over saying, "Hey, I've never used a fountain pen before. And I'm thinking of getting my first one." Obviously, they're not getting ours for their first one because it's really quite expensive and not the easiest to understand product. But obviously, we would still help them, and we talk through them. We talk about specialty grinds and stuff like that. So it was really an event that made us think and consider what our strategy was going to be in the future.
Well, I imagine that if you are to sell expensive pens, then pen shows in New York and San Francisco are good venues.
We'll see if they do it again. At Stationery Fest, we sold most of our Sailors, and that had been just sitting there for so long. But for Q-Sato products specifically, I think DC probably still did better overall. But I think it led us to think, when we release the next product, how is it going to tie in with, bringing that kind of community over, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But I hope they do it again next year. So Daisy and Neil, if you're listening, and also the rest of the Yoseko team, please consider.
Sounds good.
And Jacob, we need to get you out to one of these events. People are asking for you.
Someday, it will be fun for
sure. One day. We'll have to, or they can all just come here.
That works as well. Well, we'll have tips pretty soon. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right. I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And with that being said, my name is CY. You can find me on Instagram at Tokyo Station Pens and at Q-Sato, and you can also find us at qsatotokyo.com.
And my name is Jacob, and I am a foodie fan on Instagram and on Threads, and occasionally on YouTube.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.